The Evil Dead Does Christmas, or at least that is the log line for this Mark Polonia 2023 festive horror. So, Yule Log, this is a horror clearly influenced by the Evil Dead series. It focuses on three middle-aged guys who go to a cabin in the woods at that kind of time of year. We've got two bachelors and one guy who's lost his wife, and they're kind of going there just to kind of get away from it all. At the same time, there is a woman who has had a car crash and who has been possessed by this spirit of a witch who was killed in the area centuries before. And this witch was killed on this particular tree, which these three guys end up using for firewood, which then exacerbates the situation even further. So it ends up being kind of a siege by these demonic forces in this kind of cabin in the woods kind of style scenario. What will happen? You will have to watch the movie and find out. So if you are familiar with the name Mark Polonia, you'll know that this is a very, very low budget, quickly shot, amateurish production. But what can I say that works in this movie? I have to say, and in the context of movies made by Mark Polonia, the script of this one isn't the worst. It might be faint praise, but that's what I can say. I actually think there's a reasonable idea for a story here, and I quite like the fact that the idea being that these guys have used wood that was used on a kind of, a sacrifice, ultimately a kind of a witch trial where a witch was killed centuries before. This old dead tree, they've just kind of unknowingly used it for firewood, and this has kind of created this problem. So I kind of quite like that idea here. And the movie is clearly referencing the Evil Dead, and it's such a kind of low budget, crappy film. It's obviously not trying to pass itself off as a genuine kind of Evil Dead alternative, but it's kind of just fun to see those elements like the kind of the POV camera, the kind of the similar kind of sound effects, the kind of the branches that you would have seen in the original Evil Dead, that the trees that are enclosing this cabin and things, and the various vines and stuff which attack people. So that's all there. So that was kind of quite fun, I have to say. One thing this movie does do, which I find is a rarity in Mark Polonia films, it takes its time a little bit and to set up the characters. So you do get a little bit more characterization than some previous efforts by this kind of team of people. So yeah, you do feel this movie takes its time a little bit. You get to know the characters, you get to know their kind of relationships, and despite the acting being amateurish, he always uses the same bunch of actors, Jeff Kirkendall, Tim Hatch, for example. It gives this time at least to have some idea that these characters are somewhat fleshed out. But let's not kid ourselves, let's talk about what doesn't work. Again, this is a ultra low budget movie. Polonia isn't known for caring too much about continuity within the kind of the films. There's various flubs and just things that are just kind of quickly kind of passed over. Like the colour of a car will change from one scene to another. Instead of having a real wooden fire, we simply have like a fire graphic and things like this. It's really kind of just silly and cheap the whole way through. I mean, if you're familiar with these actors, Jeff Kirkendall and such, it's kind of amateurish acting at the best of times. I think this movie may, because they have time to slow down a little bit, it's maybe better than some productions, but nonetheless, in comparatively to other productions and other filmmakers, the acting is still on the kind of the weaker side. There's an over-reliance on kind of digital effects. Sometimes less is more. You didn't need to do a lot of these digital effects. There's kind of some false fire effects, and we have a stupid CGI dragon at the end of the movie for some reason that comes out of nowhere. So didn't need to be there. I think this movie could have been better had it been sort of somewhat stripped down a little bit. And then we get some cheap practical effects, like we have these two spirits of these guys turn up with kind of modern day kind of skull masks on that look like they could have been out the purge, but they're meant to have been the people who executed this witch, like, centuries before or something like that. So there's just a general kind of like shoddiness in the kind of the film. Yeah, it's just an all-around kind of like sillier production, and I think although the script is sort of maybe serviceable, the execution of that script and kind of putting it to film, they've kind of maybe squandered some of the neater ideas here. There's one or two okay. I didn't mind the actual effects of the witch, the mask, but again, it's just like modern day sort of clothes and stuff like that, just kind of, you know, just doesn't kind of sell you on it. I mean, this movie is not meant to be necessarily a serious horror movie. Arguably, Polonia movies never really are. But sometimes I wish filmmakers would just try and do a little bit of a better job sometimes, rather than just banging out like 10 films a year just because they kind of want to kind of turn a small profit on each, and just once in a while make a kind of a decent movie. This isn't the worst Polonia movie, I would say, but I still don't think it's a good film. I was really sort of thinking, is this going to be a 3 or a 4 out of 10? But I'm going to give it a 3 because that stupid three-headed dragon at the end of the movie, ridiculous. 3 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Please do leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.